Hello, everybody. This is the shadowy Joe748.
Super shadowy.
Here with SD1. And our special guest today is Bluejack. We had a really fun event last night. It was it was the first ever time we did a charity blackjack tournament after one of our boot camps, and it was awesome.
I'm exhausted though. Like, so much fun. I'm exhausted.
I've never been more nervous than dealing at a blackjack tournament table for the first time. And Anthony Curtis came and helped out a lot, and he kind of told the dealers, like, all right, guys, like, this is not easy, and he was giving us the instructions, and I was following and everything, but we knew how to do it. And he said like 3 times, this is not going to be easy. And I kind of didn't believe him, and then I messed up the dealing 3 times.
Yeah. Yeah, I did the exact same thing, but it seemed like everybody had a great time. Bluejack is in town for that as a boot camp grad. He was invited, and were you in the tournament?
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah,
I didn't,
was.
because you weren't at my table. I didn't know if you were. So how did you do?
I made it through the first round and then busted out the second round.
Okay. Did you have a good time?
It was a blast.
Awesome.
Yeah, everyone had a good time.
Yeah, we don't do this often, but sometimes we'll have a boot camp grad meetup after one of the boot camps, and we invite anyone who's been to a boot camp previously to come and hang out. We have like a little party, and this time we decided to do that, but also add on this charity blackjack tournament to help problem gamblers was the charity. So it was a blast. Yeah,
those of you who listen to the Dr. Fong podcast from UCLA, who we loved as a guest, and who is a big proponent of BJA actually, and now the blackjack ball. The proceeds from that are actually going to his research and his 501c3, and that's also who we raised for, which was really, really cool. Anthony Curtis was great, helped us out a ton, and then the always enjoyable Richard Munchkin did a talk and shared some great stories and answered like open question session for everybody. And pretty much you can't not have a good time listening to Richard and getting his responses. So thank you, Richard and Anthony. We know you listen. All right, Bluejack. Talk about how it all started for you.
Start with birth.
We'll do a
10-hour podcast.
Was it a long labor or?
Well, I think the first introduction I had, I was thinking back, was about 15 or 16 years ago. I was working at a job, and one of my coworkers and I were having a conversation, and he brought up the MIT team and card counting. I was like, well, what's that? And I no concept. And he kind of explained it to me, what he thought. You memorize some charts, you have to be pretty intelligent and different things. He watched the documentary or whatever. And so that kind of stuck in the back of my head. And then about 10 years later, it was right around COVID, that I came across Colin's videos and his documentary and watched it, and thought this is pretty cool, and so didn't really have a lot of aspirations to do it full time, but I was like, this is something that's be neat to be able to, experience and, develop the skills to execute it. Like, how cool would that be? So I got the subscription to BJA, went through the training, ended up coming to a boot camp. I think it was 22. And
man, was it that long ago?
It was either fall of 21 or the fall of 22. I can't remember. Yeah. And so then kind of dabbled in it, very, very small stakes, just randomly. I live fairly close to a town that has some good games, and played a little bit there. And then it was a year or so later until I really started to get more aggressive with developing my skills and raising the stakes or whatnot. So
I remember your boot camp for sure.
Really?
Yeah, you had a pretty good game.
I think I was pretty comfortable with basic strategy and like kind of keeping a running count, and that was about it. I didn't have I didn't know any deviations. I didn't. I had to go pretty slow. But
but you didn't lose the count in your test out, did you? You didn't have the deviations.
I think Loud and Often did my test out, and I think I might have gone off by 1 at one point. I don't remember. Okay. But he essentially said like you're. I think I passed in the point of like, you have everything there. It's just definitely need to, work on polishing it up. And I had I was very robotic and very slow and methodical.
Everybody is in the beginning.
Yeah.
How was the transition to starting to play bigger stakes for you after that?
Well, it's kind of interesting. So I think, and then my understanding of the game was very limited, and I really knew there was a couple individuals that I met at the boot camp that actually one of them was in the town that I'm next to or near to, and so we talked a little bit. And at that point, like I didn't really understand N0. I didn't understand risk, and risk wasn't a big factor because I was betting like $10 and $15 six deck tables. And I was talking to this one individual that was in the same town, and he was actually here last night, which is the first time I'd seen him for several years. And we both looked at each other and were like, I think I recognize you. Like, where did I meet you from? And then we put the two and two together, and we hadn't talked for several years. And so that was really nice to see people. But, and so I told him, like, hey, man, I had a couple of questions about something on these six deck games. He's like, well, why are you playing six deck? Like, this is a town that's very well known for, very quality double deck games. He's like, have you even looked at like the N0 and I was like, no, not really on double deck. And so I did. And so that kind of got me into double deck. And obviously the double deck tables were a little bit higher minimums. And so I started, getting a little more creative and digging deeper into bet spreads and realizing, the potential that was there with the games that were available. And so kind of worked up to some $25 and $50 double deck. And that's when I was definitely seeing the profit potential. And then from there, when I went bigger, it was more just a year or so later. It was just a check the box. Like I was like, I wanted to play. My goal is just I wanted to play 2 by 1,000, somewhere. And so I was like, I'm just going to go somewhere. Like, where can I go outside of my local? Because I hadn't been getting a lot of heat because I didn't want to burn them to the ground. And so I made a trip and got some good information on a game and went and played for, I think it was 7 hours at 100 to 2 by 1,000.
Nice.
Had like a $15,000 something win. And, ended up just leaving because it was like 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. I was exhausted and went back to my hotel, and I was just like, this is awesome. Like this
is easy. Why didn't I bet 2 by 1,000 years ago?
Yeah. No, it's like it's just the adrenaline and the excitement, and just, it was a blast. And so,
and then it turned.
and then I've definitely seen both sides of the coin.
So as you're ramped up to these, bigger stakes, I'm sure you've seen a big difference in the heat and everything like that. How are you dealing with all that?
Yeah, for sure. And I think that's what one of my best friends, that's, also an AP on BJA, we've talked about that a lot, that I feel like the smaller stakes, not the $10 and $15 stakes, but like the $25 and $50 double deck betting greens, I got more heat. I feel like that overall as a rule than the bigger stakes. And obviously the bigger stakes at certain the bigger stakes isn't very applicable at all properties. Obviously you can find a $25 game, just about anywhere, but to be able to find places that you can get time in at the bigger stakes is more of a challenge. But there are places that, it's definitely still very doable. And I feel like that, like when you get to, there's definitely some aspects where I feel like the heat is gotten less. Obviously, like, that's the thing, like you see on the forums, people, complaining about tipping. Like, I can't remember the last time that anyone haggled me for a tip. It's just like when you get to the higher limit rooms and whatnot, it's just a lot of the stuff goes away. That a lot of the challenges, I feel like, obviously there's a new set of challenges, but a lot of the challenges at the lower stakes doesn't exist because you can play more open tables, you can get more heads up time and things of that nature.
Yeah, we've talked about this before, guys, and it's awesome to hear your experience with it, because obviously there is a point of what your bet looks like, but when you play higher stakes, it is a real thing at specifically casinos that take the action. That's a very important underlying point here.
Yeah.
But when they take it, they're not going to be quick to back you off because they don't want to lose that kind of action if they take action.
And I think you have to get a little bit creative. You don't, with the way that you bet, I think there's things that you can do that definitely help, longevity, and can maybe, obviously at the end of the day, if you're spreading and they look at you like, it's going to be clear, but there's things that you can do to get creative with the bet spread to, facilitate some more time.
Especially on double deck.
Yeah, especially on double deck. Double deck's much more forgiving. You have to be very conscientious of risk and N0. But double deck's much more forgiving on some certain things that six deck wouldn't be applicable on. And that's really all I play anymore is double deck.
Can you give an example of one of those things?
Yeah, I mean, like for example, if you look at, and I think others have alluded to in these podcasts, leading out with a bigger bet, not necessarily starting with, and some of these good double deck games might be like a 0.2 or 0.3% house edge. A $500 bet on that is a few dollars of negative EV. So when you can sit down and lead with that, and not necessarily going forward every shoe, but it definitely doesn't fit the normal look of a card counter.
Yeah, your mileage doesn't last as long as the six deck doing that same approach, because sometimes it'll take so long for the count to be an acceptable range. But with a double deck, at least you could get there in a few hands, and then your bet is still
or the first hand, the second hand. You could be at a positive count for sure.
That's the perfect situation when you do use that. And by the way, guys, like when Bluejack's talking about that, and I know we said it before, but it really important to me, says he's not leading out with a bigger bet all the time. He's setting up a presence at the table when he first sits down, especially when the pit boss is right next to him and he's entering him in the system, rated or not rated. They're entering you no matter what. So that's an important qualifying point. But on a double deck, you lead out with a 500. It's not outside of the realm of possibility. You're already in max bets after the first hand, or at least a comparable bet to the 500.
For sure.
Which is always nice.
Yeah, I think end chip inventory is huge. Obviously, when you get to bigger bets, I mean, it's almost a given. It's, if you're trying to keep your name clean, you have to have a chip inventory. You can't play that kind of stakes without. And so I think that helps too. When you walk up to the table and you pull out a stack of purples and just plop one down, for your first bet, I think that helps, because they just kind of at that point assume.
Have you kept your name clean?
Not, I did for a long time, and then there was a very unfortunate event. So yeah.
How many hours do you think you've gotten before your name got out there?
It just happened recently, and I honestly haven't done a lot of counting this year, so it would have been just over 800.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah, I mean, so I'm so glad you say that too, because I've obviously always been a proponent of not playing rated. Interestingly enough, Richard Munchkin let out yesterday or last night at the festivities with some high points of things he would recommend, and it's changed a lot from conversations Richard's had on gambling with an edge and whatnot. He now leads out with don't play rated, and I've obviously been a proponent of that for a long time. Joe and Colin are the ones that told me when I came to boot camp, like, yeah, it's not worth it, which saved me so much.
Absolutely.
And people have challenged me on that. Like, how do you bet what you bet? How do you get around like not playing rated? I'm like, I just don't.
Yeah. It's very doable. If you have the determination to do that, and it fits in, and fits in your goals. Obviously, if you're a grinder doing it full time at those stakes, you have really no choice but to, at some point, you have to give your name, because you have to cash out, after each session, because you need your bankroll for, the next shop on down the road or whatnot.
Depending on your bankroll size, because I never.
Well, that's true. That's true. Yeah.
And you're playing locally though, right? So it's easier.
I was. So I played locally for a few years, and then got to the point where I was just kind of almost bored, and so I kept pushing, and I knew that I was probably approaching the threshold of like, okay, you're getting, because I was playing a fairly small spread in unit sizes on this, some pretty good double deck games. And so then the town that I'm close to, there was a period where once I kicked it up to a fairly substantial amount, the one shop I played, I mean, hundreds of hours at, and the last time that I was there, I booked just over a $20,000 win. And so so that was a couple years ago. They didn't appreciate that very much. And so so I haven't been back. Everything that I do now is at about half a dozen different places around the country that I'll make one trip to every few months, and places that have taken action that have been fairly tolerant, and so that way I'm able to keep a chip inventory of a few places, and it works fairly well. So
in your history of playing unrated, does it bring all kinds of heat down on you?
Absolutely not. It's only awkward if you make it awkward.
There you go. Hear that, guys?
Yeah. It's only awkward if you make it awkward. yeah, you just have to be confident and just roll with it and just go, and if they ask why not, it's none of their, I mean, I just don't want one. Cool. And I just turn around and play, I think I've seen it firsthand where I was playing a high limit room and another individual comes that I actually knew as a card counter, and they sit down at the table just, across the way, and just listening to them try to, not a knock on them, but listening to them try to explain away why they don't want a card made it more awkward. I think drew more heat than just, no, thank you. And just turn and do your thing, so.
Why do you think you're able to last so long at that one place early on?
I'm not sure. I know the other counters that have played there for a few years, and I think just a small amount of cover, and then they got to know me too. They didn't know my name. They didn't know. I never even used a name. I mean, they never even asked. They just, they got to the point where you don't have a card, right? Yeah, no, and you just play. And I just got kind of comfortable. They're fairly tolerant. It's just one of those things that goes in swings. You see a shop that gets tolerant, and then there's a couple of them that have, went from good double deck to now it's pretty trash within the last year. And they, and a lot of folks have started getting countered there. So, yeah, I think it just goes in, people get lax and then they get crushed and they tighten up and everyone leaves, and then the games loosen up again, and you can, just, it seems like that's my limited view. That's what it seems like it can go in cycles. So
absolutely. It's cyclical all the way. So what does being an AP and a card counter look like in your personal life? Like how does it fit in? Your dad, right?
Yeah.
Like to your normie friends and...
Yeah, I mean, I just gave up explaining to people what I do, because they're like, I mean, they'll be like, oh, you like gambling, right? It's like, well, no, not really. I mean, I do. I mean, it is gambling, but it's like I really have no desire to go to a casino or to do anything other than some sort of AP play. But yeah, so I've it's one of those things I think a lot of people see or the experience. You've learned this new skill set, and it's exciting and it's thrilling, and so you want to tell everyone, and it's like you can have conversations with people. Like one of my closest friends, I've had, I've sat down and explained everything. I've showed him like the training on the website. I've explained like everything. This is how this works. This is why the math, works. And he still has no clue. So I gave up. I just do my thing and just tell people like, oh yeah, I'm going on business or something. And because I just don't even want to tell them, yeah, I'm going on another trip, then there's just the misunderstandings is so rampant. It's just, but yeah, I know my daughter, she actually probably understands it more than a lot of adults. And so she absolutely loves it and just eats up all the stories and everything that whenever I get back from a trip, she wants to know, how did it go? How were the casinos? Did they catch you? Did this and that? And she just loves it. So.
Oh, that's awesome. All right. So like in all your journeys and your traveling and your play, give us a story that really stands out to you.
So earlier on, when I just started to progress to like the green chipping on some good local double deck games, at that point, I'd honestly never met another card counter in a casino. I'd never seen one, or if I did, I didn't recognize it. And so I do my normal. I would, on a couple weekends a month, I would go to this city and, had a handful of good games, play an hour each place, and then turn around and play an hour at each place again. So I was going through my rotation. I sit down on a pretty good. It's actually a $50 double deck. No one's there, heads up, just smoking through it. Probably, fast dealer, and just no one's paying any attention. And so I'm sitting there playing. It was a weekend night, and this couple comes up, and they look like they're on date night. Dressed a little nicer, holding hands. They walk up to the table and like look at it and sit down, and I'm like, oh crap! Like here, this is getting ready to be extremely slow. Like my hands per hour are going to get cut to they're they don't look like the typical gambler in the sense of like they just look like a couple that's just having fun. They're just out on date night, just to, go gamble a little bit, whatever. And so they sit down. She pulls out $500 out of her purse. He pulls out his wallet, pulls out $500. They sit down and they start playing. So we're all, we're all betting $50. First or second hand, the count goes up. And so I'm not paying any attention. I push out like I don't remember what my spread was, probably like 150 or 200. And I look over and, she was at like 100 or 100 and a quarter, and he was at like 200. I'm like, well, that's kind of interesting. And so then we played that hand, and that's what I noticed pretty early on. Is like, well, they handle the cards very well, for a pitch game. Like you can tell they played some blackjack. And so then I realized the count went up, and so I stacked, and then they stacked too. And I'm like, and then the count dropped, and we all pulled back to 50, and I'm like, oh, great. So like and I had mixed emotions, because first I was like, well, this is exciting. Like, this is so cool. Someone else is, kind of that. I haven't said a word to them yet, but like there's some sort of a connection going on. Like, but then it's like, get off my table, So I tried, and they were just like kind of snuggled into each other, whispering, and I mean, now obviously, I know they were, passing the count and whatnot. One of them would talk to the pit, and then the other one would keep the count. And so I tried to get their attention, and nothing. I mean, we were into the third shoe, and I was like, okay, this is something's got to change, because we can't just sit here and play all night. And so as soon as the count went up, I quick pushed out a big bet, because I knew they were going to. And then as soon as they pushed out a bigger bet, I turned to him and it's like, are you just going to bet the same thing that I bet every hand? And so that's when and the gentleman stood up and said, I think we're going to take our profit, and colored up and turned to me and said, I apologize. It took me a little while. And they colored up, she colored up, and then I felt really bad, because so I was like, I'm sorry, ma'am, like, have a nice evening, whatever. And so then they walk away, they leave, and I'm like, crap, did I screw that up? Like, I never really experienced that before. And so then I don't remember the conditions changed, whether the table got full or something. I mean, I ended up moving tables to another pit, another $50 double deck. And I'm playing along, same thing, just heads up, just smoking through it. And I look up out of the corner of my eye, and I see him standing behind me, just kind of watching. And so we were getting to the end of a shoe, and I said, hey, do you have a minute to talk? And he's like, yeah, for sure. And so that's when my first introduction, and they're on the site here, Flooster, Mr. and Mrs. Flooster, and they were actually on a podcast, I think maybe like a year or two ago. And so at that point I'd played a little bit bigger stakes, and I'd seen some good wins, nothing extraordinary, but just some solid profits. And then that weekend, so we exchanged phone numbers, visited a little bit. I just went on an absolute downswing. So every shop that I went to, I think I lost like 7,000 or 8,000 that weekend, which looking back now isn't astronomical, but it just crushed me, because I hadn't experiencing like that. Like literally, everywhere you went, you just lost every hand. And so that relationship and meeting was invaluable. They've become like really close personal friends. We talk regularly, and that's why we started texting that weekend. And I told him, I was like, I'm just getting killed. Like, I don't know what to do. He's like, but they encouraged me. And I think you probably understand that too. Is like, it's so vital to have people that you can kind of vent to, and just, if nothing else, just an ear, just complain. Like, there's been plenty of times I've called him and said, all right, you're going to be my, just listen, because I'm getting ready to, I just am so frustrated right now, because I just finished a session that, you just get clobbered, and you just have, and so they've become that, and just, the encouragement to just, keep up with it, keep at it, you're playing good. And that's vital, I think. And then they've made, and just the thing that like Richard talked about last night, your network is invaluable. And so meeting them, they've introduced me to other people that have become not as close of personal friends, but very invaluable in the AP life. We still talk about to this day, our meeting, and how someone kicked us off at a true four, and they still remember that. It's like 2 years ago. It was a true four, and we left that table for you, so you better appreciate that.
Listen, this is what I hear. I hear that Flooster started helping you out and becoming a friend, quote unquote, because he was stepping on your game.
That's true.
I'm just kidding, Flooster. I'm just kidding. Yeah. I think we say this all the time. And when we had an excellent boot camp this weekend, and Colin always leads out with something, and he said it a couple of times. I was like, man, I need to change. Like, he said this out loud at the boot camp. He's like, I really need to change this, because the most valuable thing about the boot camp specifically now is you actually get to network with other card counters that are doing, like, we're kind of like in the silo when we're training and learning this. And yeah, you're listening to a podcast and you're on the forums, which are all amazing things, but like then actually meeting people that are doing the same thing, and then growing relationships and learning about what the networking brings, like the BJA community is priceless for that. And, props to Flooster for like leaning in and you leaning in and you guys growing a relationship that also now at this point, I'm sure you would say this, the relationship means way more than even 100%. The EV that you get for the money.
Yeah, without a doubt.
So
and that's
really
the thing
cool.
too. Yeah. And just having, being able to use the BJA site to develop relationships in other cities. Cause that's the thing too, especially playing larger stakes. That's been invaluable is, having friends and relationships that are mutually beneficial near games that you play where you can unload, some chips and someone that can just, it's not a big deal. They drive right past that place every day. They can, get rid of a few at a time or whatever for you. And, things like that, or to buy chips, and it's crazy. Someone that's become a friend and lives in near one of the shops that I frequent, a few times a year. We talked on the forum or through the forum on the messages and then, exchanged numbers and visited for a while. And the first time I met him, it was just crazy because he's like, this is so wild. Like we just met and we're literally exchanging like tens of thousands of dollars in my pickup in a strip mall parking lot. And we've never, like, this is the first time, like, hi, this, first time we've met and here we are, it looks like we're doing a drug deal. So,
yeah. So I'm gonna share a little story just to piggyback off of that because Joe and I not that long ago were on a kind of a big play and we had to be in my region and it was like a whole team of us and we just had a ton of money dumped out on like my kitchen island and all these people and my wife just comes down and just looks and just shakes her head and somebody said something to her and she was just like, it's what she always says to me. She goes, whatever, it's just Monopoly money.
Yeah, because it was just like an assembly line of efficient people just counting, just like doing, shuffling stuff around. And it just looked like it was, I saw her when she walked down and I looked at her and she was just like, I didn't know what she was thinking, but I did see the head shake.
That's always really, really entertaining.
And also because those people weren't there, like they just showed up and then she came downstairs and there was like 15 people in the house.
It went from a couple of us to like 15 people and she like if you do the layout of my house, she like comes down the stairs and just overlooks the kitchen and she just gives this look and I'm like, oh, God love you, honey. You're a great wife. To put up with the randos no, they're not randos, but like just people one after the other piling in and then the chaos and seeing all that. But that's really cool. Any like fun stories in terms of like wacky stuff that's happened at the casino, whether it be involving, the gambler or Ploppy or a pit boss or maybe a dealer that just absolutely adored you and then got really let down when they found out that you were a card counter?
I don't think I have any like super crazy stories like that. I try to just, honestly, my approach is to just find a corner of a high limit room with an empty table and just sit back there and just play, try kind of just blend in, and there's things that you can do. I mean, obviously like if the pit's standing there and you see an error and you like, bring it up because it's going to be brought up, and something like that, or something as simple as that, or just showing common courtesy. A lot of times I've played actually in your city, there's a place that, not the best double deck, but I mean, I can find like, if you're just quiet and you sit in the back corner at their double deck, lots of times the pit, I've played there for multiple hours and the pits never even came back to check on me. Like they just stay up at the balk tables and stuff up front.
Oh, I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah. And so, I think I try to just, nothing terribly exciting that I can think of off the top of my head, but, yeah. Well, I think probably the most exciting story, not from, like any interactions, but the biggest win that I had, I was playing at a place that I frequent. And, I go there 3 or 4 trips a year and, they've been very tolerant. There's some big money that flows through. And so I walk in and they have a really good double deck. And so I'm sitting there playing and, the shuffle machine breaks. I was going to either one hand of 1,500 or 2 hands of 1,000. So the shuffle machine breaks and they have a pretty good 6 deck. And my 6 deck, like I said, I just never play 6 deck, but I was like, oh, we'll give it a shot. I'll walk over there and, the count, skyrockets with the second or third hand, probably actually as long in that, probably a deck in or so. I'm at max bets. Yeah, I'm at max bets, the entire shoe. And So I'm just 2 by 1,000 the whole way through, probably a solid 4 decks of cards and winning a large majority of the hands, just having really, really good variance. And just as we literally deal the last hand, the shuffle machine at the double deck gets fixed, and the pit boss stands up and looks over at the 6 deck table and sees, just stacks and stacks of purples and blacks, and his jaw. This is a place that, like I said, the first time I was there, I had it's like a $15,000 something win. We were just no heat. No one seemed to really even care. And I'd experienced kind of the same thing going, the other times I'd been there, but he looks and just sees piles and piles of chips in front of me, and his jaw just hit the floor, and he just stands there and just looks at me in shock and goes straight to the phone. It's like, well, I think it's time to call an Uber. So, and that's, just chips went into my pockets. My coat was about to fall off, and we ordered an Uber as I was walking out the door. It's like, how fast can you be here? Because I know. So, but it's exciting just to see it happen in real life, especially when you have positive variance. That was pretty thrilling. But
talk about a thrilling ass kicking that you took.
Oh man! So after that first win at the same shop, I'll give you an example. So that I think I carried out 17,000 and something in chips, 17 and some change, thinking, well, I'm going to go back, and I didn't cash anything out. I just walked out, ended up going home. I played one more shop, went home, and then I was actually on a trip with Flooster, not a card counting trip, but just they had invited me along on a comped trip, and we were close to the city, and so I was like, hey, let's go over. They have a great game. Let's go over and play here. Not together, but we had a rental, and so we go over there, and they were doing some other plays too, not necessarily just blackjack. But I walk into the high limit room, and I think I'd brought somewhere around 10,000 in chips with me, and I had cash too. And it's exactly the opposite. It was like you sit down and you start pulling out more and more and more chips, and pretty soon all the chips are gone. And then you start pulling out cash. And it was a matter of maybe a couple of hours. And I got up. I was like, dude, I just can't do this anymore. It wasn't even a bankroll issue. And there really wasn't even much heat. Obviously, when you're losing, the heat can go down considerably. But not all the time, but it definitely helps. And I was like, dude, are you guys done? Because I'm ready to go. I was just at this, frustrated at that point. Is the biggest loss. I don't remember it was at that point. It was the biggest loss. It was north of 10,000. But I've definitely gotten that back and some more from that place. So,
do you think there's a difference between backoffs when you're betting high versus when you were betting in lower stakes?
So when I bet just lower stakes, like just greens, I feel like there was more heat, but I was extra cautious. So I never played for very long. And I was perceived heat. Whether, at that point too, I was less experienced, so it's hard to get maybe a solid grasp, but I honestly never had a back off for, it was like a year or two before I had my first back off. So I think I've had one trespass and maybe half a dozen back offs. And no, it was more than that. Maybe about a dozen. I'd have to go back and look, but 10 or 12.
Wow.
So
how short are you keeping the sessions?
So that's where I think it just depends on the shop. So the places that I go to seem to be fairly tolerable. And once you get past the first 30 minutes or an hour, you're kind of good. But prior, I was keeping them very short because I would just, like I said, there was 3 or 4 shops. You just go from, 30 minutes to an hour, 30 minutes to an hour at each place and turn around and do it again. You can get 6 or 8 hours in an evening pretty easily without.
And how far apart are these casinos?
Like a couple minutes.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So you're doing the Vegas
town
approach, but somewhere else.
Right.
Yeah,
Correct.
Cool.
Yeah. Yeah. So I've never had any bad experiences. But that's the thing too. It's I think just being polite and courteous goes a long ways. And that's why you see that's one thing I appreciate the Canadian team. Was Rick?
Yeah.
Yeah. You see their YouTube videos and they're always very courteous and professional. I think it goes a long ways. You're not going to change their mind. The best thing you can do is just, treat people with human decency. And so that's what I've tried to do. Hey, ask you don't play table games anymore. Absolutely. I can respect that, and even just to compliment them, you have a beautiful casino. I appreciate your dealers
even
have been very professional, even if it's not. Yeah. But no, you can usually find something, to and I think that goes a long ways. So to keep it de-escalated or whatnot.
For sure.
So
how do you mix it up with the dealer in the pit? Like, what's your approach while you're at the tables?
to not interact, just kind of just sit back in the corner and just disappear. Yeah. Just be quiet. I'm not super talkative. There's a couple different approaches. But I think if you're just quiet and try to just go in and just not cause trouble and just sit in the corner and just do your thing, that's kind of what I try to do. And that's the thing, like, compliments go a long ways. The pit comes over, hey, I like your shirt, or your hair looks nice, or something like that. And then they know you're just, I think people let their guard down. And as long as they see that you're not causing their dealers any issues and you're friendly and courteous, lots of times that can help significantly.
How do you do the quiet approach but not look like a robot? Because I think some people fall into that trap where they don't want to be don't want to talk, but then they look too.
I think it kind of depends. Some places you sit down, the first thing they say is, where are you from? What's your name? All this stuff. And I think there's ways depending on the personality. And it's just, I think there's ways that you can still be friendly, but they kind of get the idea, like, hey, I'm not here to have a conversation. I'm not here to, without being rude or whatever. And sometimes it is. Sometimes I've done that too. We're just, hey, where are you from? And then just don't say anything. And that's obviously not appropriate in all circumstances, but literally just pretend like you don't hear them and then just play. And then they realize, and sometimes it makes them, it's awkward. And so they just, okay. Then they kind of shy off of saying anything, and then they just deal. And so I think there's different approaches based on the dealer and the personality and whatnot, but there's definitely ways to get that impression across, like, hey, I'm just here, just chill, whatever.
Yeah, I like hearing about your approach. If you remember back to your boot camp and my talk about the act, and I think the one thing that it's hard for me to convey, being such an extroverted, boisterous person, and what I look like at the table, I try to say it, but is that if you're a quieter person, and not necessarily, you don't have to be introverted, but if you are introverted, that there's a way to act as if and blend in to the casino without being the quintessential what people think about, like a BP or somebody and how they act at the casino. You don't have to be the loud person like I am. You don't have to act drunk. You don't have to do any of that. And I think we say it a lot, and you pointed it out, like, being kind goes such a long way.
Absolutely. Because people just naturally let their defenses down.
They do. And dealers listen, I know you guys, like, we like to bag on dealers that toke hustle and all that stuff, but they're human beings and they get treated like shit by gamblers, by sometimes the pit bosses and the company and all that stuff. So you being nice, really, it's really encouraging to hear you share, like, the longevity you've had and the few amount of backoffs that you've had betting the way you do, because you're just a nice person. Like, that goes a long way, and I think that's a testament to you figuring that out and it fitting within your personality and how you roll.
Yeah, and I think it definitely is person dependent. I mean, everyone has their approach, what fits. And that's what, so like a good friend of mine, Go Flames, is, and he was on the podcast. I talked to him regularly too. And he came through my town one time. And so I was like, hey man, let's meet up, let's go get something to eat, whatnot. And at this point I was just slowly getting into some bigger stakes, or like, I just want to try it just for, it's more, if anything, just like the experience and the stories. And so I asked, like, hey, where are you going to go tonight? Because I wanted to just, sit at a table across from him and just watch, just to see what these, pros, how they play. Yeah. And his is completely different. I mean, his is slapping the table, high-fiving, and whooping and hollering. And and he can do that. His skills are phenomenal. He can do that, and he's 100%. Like, most people would try that, and try that aren't 100%. They drop the count, they screw something up. But he's phenomenal, a phenomenal card counter. And it's just interesting to see that everyone has a different approach, and there's an approach that fits you, that fits your bankroll. My approach has changed for sure, or morphed over the years. But yeah, so there's all aspects. Some like I said, some people that fits them, and he doesn't look like a typical card counter. Like, if you walked into a casino and saw him, you would just turn, you would not have any clue, unless you watched his bets, that he was spreading with it or playing with any kind of an advantage. So there's all, but I think that's just the biggest thing is to find, and people have asked too. I've had people message me and say, hey, when you're coming through, like, do you mind just letting me, like, and I did the same thing. Like, I just want to watch, like, what, because like, you have no concept of, like, if say you're betting 25 to 200 or to 250 or something like that, what does it look like to bet 100 and then two hands of 1,000? How do you do that and make it look natural? And that's what my recommendation was number one, I don't really, you definitely don't want to invite people to come and watch play. I mean, but on the other hand, it's like, I think a lot of people can just do better just getting out there, playing, and just seeing what feels natural, like what fits your personality.
With your circuit that you do, where you go to repeat some of these casinos in your non-locals, do they not require ID when you're walking in the entrance, all of them? Like, how are you avoiding your ID so well?
Yeah, so I think it's the same thing. It's just same thing as why you don't want a player's card or anything else. Just, honest, without being disrespectful, like, it's none of their business. Like, so if you're walking in, you have that same confidence. Like, you just walk in, have that air of, I know what I'm doing. I'm walking in. I'm just, bypassing the guard. I've had one place that is adamant about IDing nearly everyone, unless you're like probably like 60 years old or older, or maybe like in the 50s. You can get by with it some of the time, but they nearly ID just about everybody. And I've had where I'm walking by and the security is like, "Excuse me, sir," and then they just give up. They're like, "Oh, whatever," and you just try it. But my rule has been, if I walk in, if I show ID, if they make me show ID, I will show them my ID, and then I'm going to wander around and leave. I'm not going to play. Or I will, if it's a place that I feel like they're wanting to scan it or something, then I'll just say, "Oh, I'm sorry, let me go out to the car and get it, no problem." Like, I'll be right back, and then I just don't come back. And there's other things too. You can try another entrance. You can try, there's one place that worked too pretty well for. But a lot of the places that I go to are pretty loose as far as they see a lot of money, they see a lot of people, and yeah, there's the ID check isn't as applicable, but it definitely does come in. That's one rule that I have made, that if I show ID anywhere, then I just don't play. It's not enjoyable when you do get an overly not aggressive, but a diligent security guard ready to play. You got your chips and your cash in your pocket and you're well rested and ready to go. And you walk in and you have to show them your ID and, go wander around and leave.
I think Joe was getting ready to say, like, that just really shows the diligence and the commitment to, protecting your name and making that decision and that trade-off. It's not easy to do all the time. Sucks. But if you really are serious about it, like, that's what it takes. You got to think through that, especially when they scan it. Like, that's high risk stuff.
So why do you like card counting?
The thrill, the excitement. That's really all it is. And I mean, the money is nice. I've had a fairly successful career, so it wasn't, I've never really gone into it with, this is where I'm going. The money hasn't really changed my lifestyle in as any real way. But it's just the excitement and the thrill and just being able to do something that, really anyone can do, but very few people actually put the time in to develop the skills necessary. And it's just cool. And there's something this nostalgic about it. Like, I get goosebumps like every time I fly into Vegas. You're flying into Vegas, you see the Strip, and it's just like you stop and think about all the stories and all the people that, in the 80s and 90s, and even Colin's team, the things that they did. And there's just, I don't know, the friendships, the camaraderie. There's not many things you can do where there's a level of trust and decency and like a gentlemanly ethics, that I think is a common denominator in a lot of this.
And I think it's unique because it's all walks of life. Like, you can have a blue collar plumber getting a card counting all the way up to a CEO of a company,
which we've had both.
Right. We've had both. And it's really cool when you have this commonality and you can kind of almost instantly build this trust factor with them. That doesn't mean you guys shouldn't be careful, guys, but
absolutely,
the BJA community is pretty unique.
Yeah, you definitely do. There's been times, and that's the nice thing about the forums too, is like if someone messages you, you can get on there and see all their posts, and you can get a fairly good grasp on someone, like their understanding of the game. and if they are part of the BJA community, to go through and see their comments and their posts and whatnot. And that helps a lot. I feel like there's definitely introductions to other individuals that I've had where I wouldn't have trusted them had I not been able to, go back and see, hey, they have been involved in the community for 3 or 4 years. They've been on the forums, they've given good, intelligent advice. And that goes a long ways, I think, too, to being able to vet, because you have to be very careful. I mean, anytime there's especially this substantial amounts of money involved, there always is someone that's, trying to pull a fast one on somebody. But I think with, and having, being able to reach out to others, I've done that plenty of times. Hey, do you know this person? And people can either vouch for them or no, I'm not sure, they joined a year ago, that, no one really knows them. Then you can make the decision to, tread a little more cautiously.
What has had the biggest impact on your card counting career, or has been the biggest influence in a positive way in your career?
Just the relationships. I mean, that's really all, for me, that's just the foundation, is relationships. There again, you see the games that the handful of games that I'm playing, I got shown them by another individual that had played them. And it was like, hey, some of my team played this area and we, had little to no heat. And so you should give it a shot. And people don't just offer that. I'm not going to offer, where some of these places are, but to just anyone. But I have to, some other friends that have looking for hours, hey, try down here or whatever. But it's the relationships. The relationships are the foundation, I feel like. And then you can do so much more than you ever could on your own. And the website's good because you can get on there and see, but it's a general understanding. But it's so local, so it's the people that have played there that can say, hey, this game, watch out for this, watch out for that. This is what you can cash out. This is what you can, all the very pertinent information that makes everything work.
Biggest mistake that you learned from?
Probably the 2 worst things. Well, 3. There was probably 3 places that I really went wrong. And every time I deviated from what my MO was. So the first one was a local shop that I played regularly, and I had rules. I only played in the evenings when it was busier, but I played a higher limit table, so I would still get heads up time, but the casino was packed. I only played evenings. I kept my sessions short, and I deviated. And, one Sunday afternoon, I was getting ready to leave town, I'll buzz back through, no one there. I mean, I lasted maybe 30 minutes to an hour, got backed off. And, then now this is a place that I've been going twice a month, 3 times a month too. And so I had to just check it off the box for a while I made the decision to. But there again, I deviated from what my standard was and I got lax. And then another time was another local where I think I spoke on it, it was I believe it was $22,000 win. And that's the thing too, I always, not saying you want to walk away from positive EV, but there are times where, and I'd book multiple $8,000 and $10,000 wins with no issue from this place. And, you get in 20,000. I mean, most shops aren't going to let that fly. And I was pushing my bets a lot bigger. And then another one was, I have a rule, I don't ever drive onto property. So I'll park just down the street. A $5 Uber is worth it in my mind. And it's sometimes the Uber and Lyft drivers will look at you weird because you're literally parked across the interstate. And they're at a gas station. And it's I've had that where they're like, where are you going again? Are you just going, did you drive here? And yeah, I'm parked here. I'm just going to why are you Ubering from your car over to this casino that's a half of a mile away? And it's don't worry about it, dude. Just give me a ride, but no. And so, that's where when I was data-based, I was driving through a city and I decided I was going to go cash chips. That was all I was going to do. So it's well, it's no big deal. I can just park across the street. I was going to go in, cash chips. I mean, I hadn't played there for a while. And I just couldn't help myself. They have a very, very good double deck game. And so then I decided, I was just itching to play. And so I was I know I can I'm just going to keep a small spread. And I'm just going to play 1 or 2 shoes. It's not going to nothing's going to happen. I'm going to play a couple shoes. I'm going to go cash out some more chips and then leave. No big deal. Well, the next thing you know, the count, and I just I'm not going to, I told myself, I'm not going to bet over 300. I'm not going to do it. And then next thing you know, there's like $700 or $800 bets going out, and it's like stacks of blacks are just growing in front of me. And then the pit starts getting kind of curious. And so then I still didn't show ID, but that's where I think they got my license plate, because then I found out that the parking lot across, what I thought was across the street, was actually still their parking lot, which I found out like a year later.
Was it tribal?
No, it wasn't. No, but that's the only thing. And then when I came back later, they trespassed me, and I assume they just had someone run the plate. It's the only thing I can think of.
Yeah. And a non-tribal, like that's blatantly illegal.
Yeah.
So to hear that it happened on a state property too is just, ugh.
Let's say someone's listening. They just got killed. They're lonely. They're driving on the dark road, listening to this. What would you say to encourage them during these hard losing times?
Yeah, hopefully they have someone they can reach out to. But obviously there's a practical approach. Like, it's not bad to evaluate your game and to do some self-reflection. But at the end of the day, the math is the math. Vegas Matt says, fire it in there. I mean, if but I mean, you just got to keep doing what you're doing, as if your game's good, and eventually it turns around. Last year was, and it affects me more so because I play very limited hours, so it takes me longer to realize. But I went through a downswing. I had some good variants for a couple years, and then I went on a downswing, and it seemed like every trip last year I just got killed, and then I made it all back in 3 sessions towards the end of the year. And then this year I went on a very slight downswing, and then now it's just push through it, and now we're back again. Just having positive variance above EV. It seems like every session. Yeah, it's definitely. Just have to push through and just keep, and that's where like relationships makes everything all the difference in the world. Just be able to talk to people. Like for me, just to be able to vent and just like call people, like, all right, shut up, don't say anything. I'm just gonna complain. I'm gonna tell you everything that went down on this last session. You're just gonna listen, and just to get it out, but yeah, friendships are very valuable.
That's something AI can't take from us.
That's right. Yeah, relationships.
Well said. Thank you so much, Bluejack, for coming on here, sharing your
welcome.
wisdom and experience. And I think there's a lot of good nuggets in there that people can take and hopefully utilize. And
all right, guys. Well, thank you for joining us again. Next boot camp, probably.
Early 2026. We're floating around maybe late February, early March, but it's not solid yet. But yeah, if you're thinking about maybe considering a boot camp, schedule a free call with us on the website on blackjackapprenticeship.com, and we can talk through it, see if it's going to work for you. And if you're not ready for that, keep enjoying the content on YouTube, Blackjack Apprenticeship YouTube channel, and all the good stuff we have in the membership side of the site.
Happy counting, everybody.